When was the last time you went shopping for food? In English. On today's podcast, you'll learn all about supermarket vocabulary in this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi Craig, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm very well indeed.
Obviously, my name's Craig.
My name's Reza.
And if you're a new listener to the show, you're very welcome. On this show, Reza and I are going to grow your grammar, vocalize your vocabulary, and help you perfect your pronunciation. With over 45 years of teaching experience, we're going to help you take everything to the next level.
Craig, we've had a little bit of feedback from a regular listener, from Mamen, I believe.
Yes, Mamen had a job interview recently in English on Skype, and this is Mamen's first voice message.
Hi Craig, hi Reza, this is Mamen from BSCast. Tomorrow I'll have the English interview and I'm a bit nervous but also so excited because it's the first time I'm going to do a job interview in English. When I finish, I'll send you a voice message telling you how things will go. So thank you for all the information you gave me, and that's all. Oh, by the way, a big kiss and a big hug. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much for your message, Mamen. Any comments, Reza?
That was really great, Mamen. Thanks. As ever, it's lovely to hear from you. But there was a grammar mistake which stood out. You said whenever it's finished, you will send us a message to let us know how it will go. But it can't be will, because if it's finished, then it's past. So you're going to let us know how it went in the past.
So Mamen did let us know how it went, because I spoke to her after the interview and I asked her if she was pleased with the interview. So did it go well?
Yes, because I was so confident. I can't believe it. Because, I don't know. I think it's because it wasn't with image. It's only with audio. So it's different, because if it's the first time you are going to speak with somebody that you don't know, you're starting to speak and your face like, but if you cannot see her, you can't see. Do you know what I'm trying to explain?
So there's a tip for you. If you do have an interview with a future employer over Skype, a job interview, maybe the interviewee will want to see your face. But if it's possible, try to ask for just an audio interview, and then you don't have the added stress of people looking at you and you looking at the person on the image of the computer. And if you do have to use the webcam so that they can see your face, please do check that there's no window behind you, because that will throw the light in the wrong direction. You want to be with the window behind the computer, shining light on your face. Make sure there's no dirty washing behind you. Make sure that you're looking presentable, exactly the same as if you were going for a physical job interview. So make sure you look very presentable on the camera.
It was a great message. Thanks, Mamen. Just be careful with the pronunciation of audio. It's a typical Spanish mistake to say "ow," but it's not. It's audio.
And then I asked Mamen about the actual questions that the interviewer asked her, and if she thought she answered the questions well.
It was okay, because really the interview, it wasn't the kind of interview I expected. So, but I studied a bit. You know me. A bit. Yeah. I listened to the ebook or the audiobook that Craig have in Patreon. It's perfect, because all the questions that you record in that audiobook. All of the questions she made me in the interview. First one, the one about talk about yourself. Do you know your duties? Not exactly the same question with the same words, but with the same structure, the same meaning.
Yes, good news. I know you are a very well-prepared person, Mamin. I'm not surprised that you did your homework, that you got ready in advance. And it was very wise of you to use the ebook, How to Pass a Job Interview. And we're delighted to hear that it helped you.
Yep. And there's tip number 2. Make sure you study and prepare before you have your interview. Learn as much as possible about the company that you're interviewing for and get those common interview questions practiced. Make sure you prepare as much as possible before the interview, because the more you practice and prepare, the more relaxed and confident you will be during the interview. And Mamin was speaking about the ebook with audio, How to Pass a Job Interview in English, which is completely free if you are a Patreon sponsor of this podcast. And it would cost €12. You can buy it if you have a job interview soon at store.mansioningles.net. What other questions did they ask Mamin in the interview, and how did she answer?
At first, she asks me, tell me something about yourself. I know that that's the typical question. And I said, well, I work at, I describe my professional career. And then she asked me, why do you want to work in this kind of job? I answered more or less. I say because of the language. I want to improve my language, my level of English. And then because I want to travel and I want to have the experience to live in another abroad. The third question was, what do you think people say about you if they have to describe you? But it was okay because I was very calm. I never had an interview before in English. Never.
That's a difficult question, isn't it, Reza? What do you think you would say if you were asked that question? What do you think people would say about you if they had to describe you?
Oh, isn't that a good question? Yeah. I would obviously try and use some very positive sounding adjectives, but I think it's also a good tactic personally to use a couple of descriptions which could sound a bit critical of yourself, to show that you know you're not perfect. So yes, by all means, that means it's no problem. Call yourself trustworthy, honest. But maybe you could say, sometimes, I'm a bit too demanding. Mm-hmm. Demanding is exigente.
Perfectionist.
Yes, things like that. So you're like saying, like, I know I'm not perfect, but almost your criticism almost sounds good in a way. There's a good side to the criticism as well.
Yeah, I agree. And Mamin's answer was trustworthy, which is fiable, isn't it, in Spanish?
Yeah.
Trustworthy, which is a very, very nice answer. And she is very trustworthy. If you are interested in looking for work in the UK, Mamin recommends these 2 websites for you, infoempleo.com and infojobs.net. All of these links can be found on the webpage inglespodcast.com/185. And thank you very much, Mamin, for sending in your voice messages. Next, we have an email from Bibi from La Coruña. Reza, would you like to read it?
Yes, Bibi writes, my name is Bibi. I am from Coruña. I have been listening to your podcast for 2 years, more or less.
Wow.
That's a long time. Thanks, Bibi. And I have a doubt. What is the difference between keep on, carry on, move on? Because as far as I know, all of them mean continuar.
Yeah, I think they do.
Bibi continues, on the other hand, Bibi, it's probably better to say also in addition or another thing, because on the other hand is more to contrast or compare two things, but you're just adding to a list. So also, in addition, another thing is I am working at a supermarket and I would like to know more about supermarket and butcher vocabulary. And she writes, y esto lo tengo que explicar en español. ¿Cómo decirles que se vayan dirigiendo hacia las cajas a pagar? Que el supermercado ya está cerrado. Eso sí, siendo políticamente correcta. Yes, I bet that's a very stressful time of the day for you when you're trying to get the customers to leave because you're closing.
Yeah.
How could she do that, Craig?
Well, let's go back to the first question she asked in the beginning, which was keep on, carry on, move on. All of those mean continuar, don't they?
Yeah, although I would say move on could be a little bit different. It could be continuar in Spanish, yeah, but keep on and carry on in the sense of I have a lot of problems in my job, for example, but I'm going to keep on trying, or I'm going to carry on trying. I'm going to continue trying.
Yep.
You wouldn't really say move on for that. Move on is more to do with physically or to go from one position to a different position, right?
Or from one point to the next point. You could say, let me move on to the next point. Let me continue to the next point.
Leaving the previous one behind.
Yeah.
Whereas keep on or carry on are more to do with to continue what you've been doing up to now.
Exactly. So I think it really depends, Bibi, very much on the context of the sentence and how you're using these phrasal verbs. But generally speaking, yeah, they do all mean continue. Yeah.
And Craig, what about our other question? How to get customers to go and pay and then leave because they have to close?
Well, you could say, come on, move on, hurry up, keep on. No, seriously, there are some expressions you could use to be polite. You could say, for example, I'm sorry, but we're closing shortly. Shortly means soon. So I say, I'm afraid, or I'm sorry, we're closing shortly. Would you mind paying for your food? Or perhaps, I'm afraid we have to close now. So, excuse me, sir, excuse me, madam, I'm afraid we have to close now. Can you think of any others?
Yes, or you could say, would you mind paying at the checkout within the next few minutes? In other words, you can't stay here. You've got to go to the checkout, the place where you have to pay, because we're going to close. But that's a much nicer way of saying it. Would you mind? That indirect way is so much more polite than saying, pay at the checkout. That's rude. Would you mind paying at the checkout is much nicer.
And remember, Bibi, to use intonation for politeness with these, because the more intonation you use when you say these, the more polite they will sound. So, I'm sorry, excuse me, but we're closing shortly. And I'm afraid we have to close now. Would you mind paying at the checkout within the next few minutes? Thank you. And that's it. You can see those expressions, obviously, in the show notes. So let's look at some vocabulary for Bibi connected to the supermarket. We'll probably look at butcher and meat vocabulary in a different episode. But Reza, what vocabulary can we...
Can I just say, just before we go on to that, I'm looking forward to that because, Bibi, when I think of meat and I think of Spain, I immediately think of ternera gallega. So I'm sure you know what you're talking about, but we'll leave that for another day.
I think of Argentinian meat.
Oh, that's
wow,
good as well, yeah.
My favorite. So obviously, Bibi works in a supermarket. A bigger, really, really huge supermarket is a hypermarket. A hypermarket. And Reza, what do you call those smaller, maybe local corner shops where you'd find in your neighborhood, in your barrio? What would they be called?
They're the grocery shop, or you could say grocers as well. Quite often these days, if you go to the United Kingdom, and indeed in Valencia, I can't speak for A Coruña, but quite often these grocery shops or grocery stores, grocers, they're owned by Asian shopkeepers. Very often Indian or Pakistani. I guess you've noticed that. And in the UK, it's the same. Mm-hmm. And quite often people, they say something which isn't technically correct, but everybody knows what they mean. They say the local Asian store or the Asian corner shop, because they're often at the corner of a road in the UK.
If you are shopping in a supermarket, the person who takes the money when you go to pay is called the cashier. the cashier, and they put the money in a cash register or a till, T-I-double-L.
Yes, and sometimes they just shorten it to register, don't they? They don't even say cash. I'll put the money in the register. They mean cash register.
Of course, when you're paying for your food, the cashier swipes the barcode, código de barras, on a barcode reader. So the barcode shows the price on the register.
And when you have to pay, you might have to swipe your credit card or debit card through a card swipe machine.
To swipe is pasar la tarjeta.
Yeah. So sometimes you actually have to move it, or perhaps the cashier moves it through a little hole, a slot. A slot is a small space where something fits, and swipe it, the movement of passing it through the slot. Or sometimes they have a card reader, which these days will probably be a screen, and you just leave the card on the screen and it reads the details, perhaps using the chip in the microchip in the card. So sometimes it's a card swipe machine, sometimes it's a card reader.
And where does all this happen? It happens at the checkout, compound noun, the checkout, where you pay for your shopping. And there's one checkout that's the express checkout. It's really, really quick because the people who go there have 10 items or fewer. They always have 10 items or fewer, don't they, Reza? They never have 11 or 12 or 13. Every person who goes to the express checkout, and this really annoys me when they don't, has 10 items or fewer. And there's a common grammar mistake that you may see in the UK when you see the sign above this checkout. It says 10 items or less. So the grammar police would say, wait a minute, items are countable, so it's not less, it's fewer. 10 items or fewer.
And that's native speakers making that mistake.
Absolutely.
So don't worry if you make it. It's not the end of the world. We'll forgive you.
And then there's an automatic checkout with no cashier. You actually do the work of the cashier and you pass your things through the barcode reader. Do you ever use those?
Virtually never. I must admit, I do not like automatic checkouts. I swear, that means I promise, I'm not exaggerating. The few times I've used one, I reckon it took longer than just going via a cashier.
Well, they can be quicker if there are long queues on the other checkouts.
But inevitably, with me anyway, I'm prone to accidents. Something always goes wrong. It doesn't read one barcode, and I have to call for attention, and the customer service attendant comes, and it would have been quicker for me just to go via the old-fashioned method of a cashier.
And queue up.
For me anyway. What about you?
Yeah, I've used them in the past. If there are big queues, then I go there and I use them, and they can be quicker if there are no problems. When you pay for your shopping, you get a piece of paper, which in Spanish you'd say ticket, but of course we don't say that in English. It's a receipt. Be careful of the pronunciation. The P is silent. R-E-C-E-I-P-T. Pronunciation, receipt.
Well then, Craig, what is a ticket in English?
You have a bus ticket if you travel on transport, train ticket, plane ticket, or a ticket for a concert or an exhibition, but not when you buy something. When you buy something, you get a receipt or an invoice, which is factura.
Now, you may have heard this if you've been in an English-speaking country. Can Miss Smith please go to aisle 10? When they say, can Miss Smith works in the supermarket, please go to aisle 10. Aisle 10, Miss Smith, please. What is this aisle?
That's paseo, I think. A-I-S-L-E. That's the different lanes or lines in a supermarket where the products are divided in different groups. The aisle.
And quite often, one aisle is dedicated to a certain type of product. So you might ask one of the workers in the supermarket, where can I find butter, please? And they say, go to aisle 8 on the left, or at the end of aisle 7, or something like that.
Of course, you also find aisles in an aeroplane and a church.
Also, sometimes you get a stand. So the aisles are the big, long passageways where you find the products on either side. But sometimes they have an independent area where the food is standing on a stand, un puesto. Typical of markets, old-fashioned markets, but you also find stands in supermarkets as well.
And when you're doing your shopping, if you only have 10 items, you could take a basket, una cesta, basket. Or if you have a lot of shopping, if you're doing a big shop, take a trolley, Trolley, which in the US would be called a shopping cart.
Now, Craig, in big supermarkets or hypermarkets, there's a lot of choice. There's a lot of different brands usually to choose from. What is a brand?
In Spanish, it's marca. So you have different companies that produce food and products, and supermarkets have their own very special brand, which is called an own brand. For example, what's the own brand of Mercadona? If you're in Spain and you know the Mercadona chain, it's Hacendado. So Hacendado is Mercadona's own brand. Supermarkets produce their own food and they name the food for the supermarket name.
Marks and Spencer's used to have a different name for their own brand. They used to call it St. Michael. Do you remember?
That's right. But St. Michael, yeah.
They got rid of that and just started calling it Marks and Spencer, but it used to be St. Michael was their own brand.
It sounded very holy.
Yeah, didn't it?
And other collocations with the word brand, B-R-A-N-D, if the name is very common, it's very well known, everybody knows it, it's a well-known brand. Or a household brand. A household brand is a name that everybody knows. Can you think of any at the moment? Any household?
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
Who hasn't
Perfect.
heard of Coca-Cola?
So that's a well-known brand or a household brand.
In other words, for a typical family house. So the household is the typical family, or maybe without family, house. So if something's a household brand, every typical family has it. Like Coca-Cola, in theory.
And at the supermarket, you can buy meat, you can buy fish, you can buy cheese. Where do you buy those products? At the counter, which is mostrador. So you have a fish counter, a meat counter, a cheese counter.
And maybe even a deli counter.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes they just say deli, the delicatessen, where you get stranger and more refined, perhaps gourmet foods for people who want something a bit special.
Sometimes meat and fish and cheese has been cut and put in a plastic packet before, so it's really convenient to buy. That's called pre-packaged food that has been wrapped specially to sell without cutting it in front of you. So you can buy pre-packaged meat or chicken, for example.
Of course, another important product you find in supermarket is frozen goods. Frozen, so brought to below 0 degrees. To freeze is the verb. And the parts are freeze, froze, frozen. So frozen goods.
And you have goods or food that's in cans. And that's called canned goods. So examples of canned goods would be fruit, carrots, vegetables, soup. Soup is sold in a can, so it's a canned good.
Some people, though, prefer their fruit and vegetables, their carrots, fresh. So fresh food, that means not in a can, not frozen, not prepackaged, is another option in supermarkets.
And you have the beverages section. Beverages, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, for example.
And also soft drinks like Coca-Cola and Nestea and all that. And also in some supermarkets, alcoholic drinks such as wine, spirits, beer, etc. Detergents are another common product that we all have in our house. They're household goods. Detergents or cleaning products to clean things like dishes, clothes, the floor, that type of thing.
And then there's a general section called household goods. We had household brand before, so anything that's commonly found in a house is a household good. It could be, for example, plastic bags for the rubbish. It could be cleaning rags or brooms to sweep and clean the house. Any general item would be in the household goods section.
Toiletries is another word. It doesn't mean toilet. They don't sell toilets in supermarkets, but they sell things which you will have in your toilet or bathroom, I should say. And those are toiletries. So it could be toothpaste, a toothbrush, a comb, shampoo, or cosmetics. Cosmetics, things to make you look nicer, makeup, lipstick, pintalabios, all that type of thing.
Collocations that are useful for people working in supermarkets. A wide range of products are sold. Una gama amplia. A wide range is a very strong collocation. A wide range of canned goods, a wide range of household goods, for example. So supermarkets generally sell a wide range of products.
They also like to advertise themselves as good value for money. Value for money. If something's good value for money, that means for what you pay, you get a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cheap price. It means that the price you pay gets you a lot in return.
And supermarket chains. Chain is cadena. Now, I know there are many listeners outside of Spain, but inside Spain, we have many supermarket chains such as Consum, Mercadona, Massimas. Can you think of any more?
Dia,
Lidl, which I think is a German company.
Aldi,
Yep, another German company. Carrefour, which is a French company.
Alcampo,
also French, I think.
Yep.
In America, there's Costco, for example. So many different chains of supermarkets, supermarket chains.
In the UK, what have we got? Sainsbury's is the big one there.
Tesco.
Sainsbury's, Tesco, Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's. They're the big chains in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Craig, not all supermarkets are big commercial chains making lots of money. Some of them are co-ops, cooperatives. You mentioned one, in fact, Consum.
I think that means that the employees receive a share in the profits. Is that right?
Yes, and that some of the money is returned or offered to the customer in the form of discounts or vouchers or coupons. Maybe the customer has to get a loyalty card these days. In the past, you got a book. In the old British co-op, the British cooperative, years ago when I was a child, my mum and me used to collect stamps, sellos.
Green Shield stamps.
And you put it into a book.
That's right.
And when the book was full or had a certain number of stamps, that got you a discount or maybe a free product or something like that.
Can of soup,
something like that. But these days, of course, it'll be done on a card. You'll have a card and they'll swipe the card through the card swipe machine, or they'll read the barcode or something like that. And then automatically that will generate a discount for you, or they'll give you coupons or vouchers. I like vouchers or coupons rather than getting money on a card. And Consum in Spain still do that. They actually give you little pieces of paper which says 30 cents off your next purchase of strawberry jam. Because Consum, it sounds like I work for Consum, I'm doing an advertisement for them, I'm not, but they give you discounts specifically on products that you buy. The products that you buy. So that's the great thing about a loyalty card. They can follow your shopping pattern, and they know that you buy this brand of strawberry jam, and they give you money off that brand of strawberry jam. In other places, they just say, a random al azar product, 50% off this type of toilet roll, but I don't use that type of toilet roll, so I'm not interested. You know what I mean? I like the way they give you a little piece of paper. It kind of feels personal.
Yeah.
With products that I personally use. I like that.
I can see that.
Craig, what about you? Are you into vouchers and coupons and all that type of thing?
No, I'm not. I don't usually pay attention. Although if I'm in a supermarket, I do look for special offers or promotions.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Yep, because obviously you want to take advantage of special offers. And one expression that listeners may not know is buy one, get one free. So you buy one product and you get an extra product for the same price as one. That's quite useful.
That's very common, isn't it? Sometimes you even hear varieties of it, like buy 3, get 4 free or something. But the most typical one is buy 1, get 1 free. Or 3 for the price of 2 is common.
Or 5 for the price of 4, etc. Yep.
Whatever.
Exactly. And also discounts can be by percentage. So you might see the expression 50% off. The off means off the price. So 50% off a product is half price or half off. For example, shampoo, 50% off this brand of shampoo.
Yeah, it's quite hard to understand these expressions if you're not used to them. You might hear an announcement in the supermarket saying, a half off all cosmetics. And if you don't know what you're listening for, you hear this thing, half off? What's this half off?
Half the price.
Half off all cosmetics, or a third off, un tercio. A third off all household goods, or something like that you might hear. Very important people who work in the supermarket, apart from people like Bibi, who work in the meat counter, are the shelf stackers. What do they do, Craig? The shelf stackers.
Well, you probably know the word shelf, estante, and when it's plural, the F changes to a V, so one shelf, two shelves, and a person who stacks the shelves replaces the products when people buy them. So to stack a shelf is to replace the food when people are buying it. And the name of a person who does that job is a shelf stacker. That's difficult to say. A shelf stacker.
Sometimes if a product's very popular or the supermarket don't have a lot, it might be out of stock. That means they don't have any more in the building. Not on the shelves and not in the storeroom.
Or in the warehouse.
Or in the warehouse.
The almacén, the warehouse.
It's all gone. So it's not in stock. It's out of stock. And one of my favorite things about a supermarket when I was a kid was the free tasting or the free samples.
As a kid, that's one of my favorite things now. Sometimes you walk in and you get some lovely ham or a piece of cheese, and then you go around the corner and you take off your jacket, you pretend to be another person, and you go back and taste some more. That's fantastic.
Did you ever just hang about? The phrase of hang about is estar por allí, hoping that they would say, sir, would you like to try blah, blah, blah? And they didn't. I've stood there for about 10 minutes. I was like, oh, well, if you're not going to speak to me, I'm going to leave then.
I used to do that when I first came to Spain, but now I just go straight up and say, hey, can I have some cheese? So where do you shop for food usually? Do you usually shop in Consume?
In Spain, mostly in Consume, yeah.
Because I know you like the market, the open market as well, the local produce.
Yes, I like. Well, it's a covered market. The Rusafa covered market, I like. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Mercato Rusafa. Yeah, it's very near my home. Yeah, and there's sorry, supermarket fans, but there's nothing like the Mercado Central de Valencia. It's amazing.
Yeah, true.
You know,
although it can be a bit expensive, it can be some products in the central market can be quite pricey, which means expensive.
Yeah.
As we know, or as some people know, the way products are placed in a supermarket has a certain psychology and a certain reason behind it. So, Reza, I'd like to ask you about some particular sections in a supermarket and see if you can tell me where you would expect to see them, in which area of the supermarket. Imagine you're entering in the main entranceway. For example, fruit and vegetables. Where would you expect to find fruit and vegetables?
Somewhere in the middle.
Do you have any idea why?
Don't know, but they tend to be in the middle somewhere.
I would say at the beginning as you enter, to give the idea of an open market. I think with the color of the different vegetables, the peppers and the apples, and I think I'm thinking of my local supermarket, it's immediately when you walk in to give the idea that you're walking into an open market. But obviously this could change from supermarket to supermarket. What about alcohol?
As far away from the entrance as possible.
I agree. Any idea why?
So it doesn't look bad for people who are not keen on alcohol and don't like the idea of children seeing it and that type of thing.
Absolutely. Also, perhaps to give you the opportunity to reward yourself for doing the shopping. So you've gone around the supermarket, you've crossed everything off the list, and I'll buy myself a bottle of wine, or I'll get myself a few beers as a reward for doing the shopping, perhaps. Sweets and chocolates, which could also be classed as confectionery. Where would you expect to see those?
In two different places, somewhere in the middle and also at the checkout, in case you missed it in the middle. Or you just thought, oh, I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna be good to myself and get myself a bar of chocolate just before I pay.
Especially if you're shopping with children and you're waiting in the queue, the children would be saying, hey, can I have some chocolate? Can I have some chocolate? Can I have some chocolate? Some sweets? And then mummy or daddy will buy them something, yeah.
Right. Exactly the same goes for chewing gum for the same reason.
And batteries. I think batteries are part of the chewing gum, sweets, chocolate, batteries. You buy on impulse. You buy as a sudden urge. Like all of a sudden you see, yes, I need that because you're waiting in the queue and you buy it. It's not on your list, your shopping list, but you buy it on impulse. What about bread and milk?
I can't think of anywhere in particular where that should be placed.
Are they usually together or spread apart? Because I think they might be the most common products that people go to a supermarket for. Fresh bread and fresh milk. In my supermarket, my local supermarket, they are at opposite ends of the supermarket. So you have to cross over completely from one side to the other side, passing all of the other products. Is it the same in yours?
Thinking about it, yeah, they are.
They're never
far apart.
they're never together. That would be too easy and you'd be in and out of the supermarket too quickly.
I'd never thought of that, but it's true. You've got a good point. Yeah, they are. They're at opposite ends.
And fresh meat?
Fresh meat in any specific area. Fresh meat tends to be at one side. It's not going to be right in the middle, usually.
Right.
It's going to be on one side.
Because I think they need to bring in the meats from outside. So it's impossible to have it in the middle of the supermarket.
Right, just purely practical.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see a pig carcass being walked through the middle of the supermarket, so it comes through a side door. Right.
Especially in the UK, I've noticed that in Spanish supermarkets, you see more of the animal in the supermarket. Whereas in the UK, meat tends to be pre-packaged. Fish is often pre-packaged. You don't tend to see the live animal so much, or the dead animal. I mean, with the blood in front of you. But Spanish people like to see that. They like to see what cut of meat they're going to get. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Do you work in a supermarket like Bibi from La Coruña? Do you agree with our analysis of supermarket psychology? Do you have something to add, perhaps? Send us a voice message and tell us what you think. Practice your speaking. You can do that on speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Or you could send us an email with a comment or question to reza@belfastreza@gmail.com.
Or you could send it to Craig, whose address I've forgotten. You could send it to Craig at inglespodcast.com. Yeah, it wasn't that hard to remember, was it really?
I thought I'd test you.
As you can imagine, I don't send that many emails to Craig. I see him, so I normally just tell him face to face.
If you would like more detailed show notes, go to patreon.com/Ingles podcast. Our lovely sponsors, Reza, would you like to say thank you to them?
Thanks for your donations on Patreon. Beatriz, Pedro, Maite, Arlem, Rafa, Nestor García Mañez from Nestor GM. That's Luces Extrañas. Maria, Lorena, Sara, Carlos Mamen, Juan, Cory Finneran from IVenvy.com. Miren, José Luis, Agus, Mariel, Manuel García, Jorge, Raúl López, Rafael Manuel Tarazona, and our recent sponsors who've recently joined us, José Manuel, Fernando Ticazo, Juan Carlos Rodado, and Pilar Martinez, who lives in France, but is learning English there. And not easy, in France to learn English. There might be some opposition. And Gambate blog.
Thank you, everybody, for supporting us on Patreon. And many thanks to Patricia from Madrid, who is volunteering to translate our episodes, our earlier episodes, going back to the beginning. So she's recently finished episode 8 and 9, which means that you can now access episodes 1 to 9 and also 131 to 142. So thanks, Patricia, and also thanks, Alberto, Araminda, and Angelica for doing that. Reza, what's next week?
On next week's episode, we have self-study tips and advice with Anna.
So until then, it's goodbye from Reza.
And goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.